Irene, there is no one here.
Hello everyone, I am Carla, and I am very excited to share with you an experience that happened to me some time ago. Since I was a little girl, I grew up listening to paranormal stories that my grandmother used to tell us in Nicaragua, where I was born and raised. They were creepy stories that always gave me goosebumps. And if that wasn't enough, my mom also had her own paranormal anecdotes. I always thought they were all just stories, until I moved to Spain and experienced the unexplainable. I moved to Spain when I was 20 years old. I now live here with my husband and our young daughter. Upon arrival, I quickly integrated into my husband's family and started working taking care of my husband's grandmother, Irene. She was a kind but elderly woman. She needed help with almost everything, and I was willing to provide it. Saturday nights used to be our favorite. We would stay up late watching a talk show and gossip. Irene loved those shows. One night, after a long TV program, I headed to my room to rest. However, something unusual happened. It was already early morning when I awoke to hear voices coming from Irene's room. At first I thought maybe I was dreaming, but no. The voices were clear. The voices were clear. My heart began to race as I approached her room. Streetlight was streaming in through the window, dimly illuminating her figure. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, as if in conversation with someone. I approached, concerned, and asked her, "Irene, are you all right?" She replied that she was talking to her siblings who had already passed away. That puzzled me, but I tried not to show it. "Irene, there is no one here," I said, trying to reassure her. But her answer was something I will never forget. "It's not true. Look over there. He's behind you," she said, pointing to my back. Fear immediately seized me. I didn't know if I wanted to turn around and confirm his words or stand still. Finally, I gathered my courage and turned quickly, but no one was there. There was only the dark and silent hallway. The situation puzzled me, but I thought that perhaps Irene, because of her advanced age, was having hallucinations or getting confused. With a lot of patience and affection, I helped Irene lay back down on the bed and tried to calm her down. After making sure she was okay, I headed back to my room, but the dream was gone. Days passed, and although I tried hard to forget that strange episode with Irene, a part of me felt that something else was about to happen. But life, with its ability to make us forget, distracted me with its routines and responsibilities. Grandma Irene, as we affectionately called her, had to spend time in Madrid with her other daughter, so during those periods, the house felt different, quieter. One weekend, my husband informed me that he would be going to a bachelor party for one of his friends. "Don't worry, I'll be back tomorrow," he said before kissing me goodbye. So that night, it was just me and my daughter at home. In the evening, after a quiet dinner, I decided to watch TV for a while. My daughter, still a baby, had her nightly routines, and while nursing, she used to fall asleep quickly. After a couple of hours, I turned off the TV and we headed to the bedroom. I settled my little girl next to me on the bed, nursing her and listening to her soft breathing as she drifted off to sleep. The room was dark, lit only by a small lamp I used to keep the space from being totally dark. As I was almost falling asleep, a sound startled me. The floor of our house was made of old wood, which caused any step on it to produce an unmistakable creaking sound. My first thought was that maybe I had left a window open and the wind was causing the noise. But no, the creaking was rhythmic, like footsteps. Footsteps approaching from the living room into the hallway. My ears pricked up, trying to distinguish each sound. Fear began to take hold of me. My heart was pounding. I could hear it echoing in my head. I tried to move, but I was paralyzed. The only reaction I had was to hold my baby tighter, protecting her. The footsteps continued, this time sounding closer. They were no longer coming from the living room, but from the hallway. The same hallway that connected to Irene's room and mine. My worst fears were confirmed when the footsteps entered my room. The creak of wood underneath something or someone moved slowly but surely, getting closer and closer to the bed. Even though my back was to the entrance, I could feel a presence behind me. A cold sensation ran down my neck, as if someone was breathing close to me. A wave of terror swept over me, and for an instant, I thought it would be the last of my life. With my heart in a fist and trembling with fear, I waited. However, after an eternal minute, the footsteps began to move away. The sound was heading towards the door of the room and gradually faded away. I stood still, waiting, listening, in case the footsteps returned. When I finally felt I could move, I took my baby in my arms, wrapped us in a blanket, and gathering my courage, left the room. I turned on all the lights in the house and headed for the living room. There, with the TV on to keep me company, I tried to process what had happened. I couldn't get to sleep that night. The next day, when my husband returned, I recounted the terrifying experience. With an incredulous look on his face, he told me that I had probably dreamed or imagined it. But I knew it had been real. And although I tried to convince myself that it had been my imagination, deep down, I knew that something or someone had been in our house that night, and it had been very close to us. After that terrifying night, things changed for our family. Although my husband didn't quite believe my story, he decided it was time to move. We found a lovely house, which we soon called home. Peace of mind returned to our lives, and honestly, I was relieved. Thinking back on that experience, I sometimes wonder, what would I have seen if I had looked back that night? The mere thought makes me shudder. I don't know what or who it was, but if its goal was to frighten me, it definitely succeeded. To all of you who read my story, I thank you for your interest. This is one of the most shocking experiences I have ever had, and although it still makes me uneasy, I am grateful that it is in the past. Greetings from Spain, dear readers. I hope to be able to share more stories with you soon. Thank you for listening.
The woman appeared.
Hello, Herr. I confess that I have been following you for a long time on your channel, and although I have always been one of those who watch in silence, today I decided to take the courage and write to you. I leave you the honor of giving the title to what I will tell you. I trust your judgment. Several stories roll in my mind, but there is one in particular that left an indelible mark on me, and I feel the need to share it. I prefer to remain anonymous, although I will give you some context about me. I live in the beautiful city of Montevideo, Uruguay. Some people, those who seem to have a more finely tuned sixth sense, have told me that I am a medium. Although I am not sure what that means in its entirety, I cannot deny that I perceive things that others do not see or feel. Stepping back in time, I want to take you to September 2017, a time that, though it seems far away, still resonates in my mind as if it were yesterday. The morning in question seemed typical, getting my 9-year-old sister ready for school. My parents, both tireless workers, were out, so after dropping my sister off at her school, the house was quiet, just for me. As usual, I set about my morning activities. I was almost ready to leave for work. Remembering that I had left my hair straightener and backpack in my room, I had to go upstairs to get them. My house, with its 2 floors, has always seemed like a cozy place to me. However, that day, as I descended the stairs, a shiver ran through my body. There she was, a woman dressed all in black, with hair so dark it seemed to absorb the light. But what really terrified me were her red eyes, staring at me. In a reflex action, I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, she had disappeared. Still trying to process what I had just seen, my phone rang. It was my boyfriend who, like me, has certain perceptions that not everyone understands. He wanted to greet me and hear about my day, but before I could say anything, he interrupted me to tell me about a dream that had left him disturbed. He spoke at first of being on a boat, and in a horror movie-like twist, he found himself in a room where a television was showing that very boat. What was disturbing was the figure of a woman with black hair, pale complexion, and red eyes that appeared on the screen. It was her, the same one I had seen. Unable to contain myself, I interjected, "I saw her. That woman appeared to me on the stairs." With a heavy silence between us, we shared our experiences and tried to change the subject to reassure each other. Though deep down, we both knew something was going on, something we couldn't even begin to comprehend. The drive to my job used to be a daily route, a moment of reflection before diving into the daily routine. That day, however, the road became a maze of thoughts revolving around the morning apparition. The image of the woman dressed in black, with those piercing red eyes, would not fade from my mind. Arriving at the premises where I worked, I met my partner, who uncharacteristically seemed more anxious and upset than usual. She decided to share with me that, while alone in the restaurant, she had heard heavy footsteps coming from upstairs. Footsteps that shouldn't be there, considering she was the only one present. I told her part of what had happened to me that morning, and although she had always been skeptical of the paranormal, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. That afternoon, solitude and silence accompanied me in the store, located in a busy shopping mall. However, the darkness that loomed from the 2nd floor held a secret. I saw her. There she was, in the midst of the gloom, the same figure that had disturbed me in the morning. I struggled to remain calm, although every minute was becoming agony. Far from screaming like crazy and running out of there, my brain decided to block something in me. I don't know how to explain it. It just locked up all the fear I felt and made me ignore it as much as possible. The rest of the day there, I spent nervous and thoughtful. My shift ended later than planned. The responsibility of running such a large facility alone stretched the hours, and that day, time seemed to move even slower. Back at home, the familiarity of the surroundings did not bring me the relief I had hoped for. As I tried to climb the darkened stairs to my room, an oppressive feeling came over me. It was as if she was there, right behind me, her breath brushing against the back of my neck. Fear prompted me to quickly turn on the lights, just to confirm that I was alone. However, when I turned them off, the hissing of her breath came back to haunt me, prompting me to run to my room. There was something I couldn't ignore. It was late September, and October was just around the corner. October was said to be a peculiar month, where magical and esoteric portals would open, closing in the early morning hours of November 3rd. Throughout that month, the woman's presence became a constant in my life. Closer and closer, more and more real. I would wake up with unexplained bruises, scratches that burned and appeared for no apparent reason. No matter how many clothes I wore, the marks always found a place on my skin. My companion, the one who used to scoff at these issues, also began to notice the disturbing presence upstairs in the restaurant. The skeptic had become a witness. The woman in black was watching her, as well as me, with a blood-chilling intensity. The nights were the worst. Tormenting nightmares plagued me, visions of the woman and terrifying situations that made me wake up drenched in sweat. Sleep became a struggle, and often I could only fall asleep at dawn or after taking my sister to school. The end of October came almost as a respite. It was November 1st when suddenly, the oppressive feeling I had carried with me for a whole month began to fade. No more apparitions, no more scratches. The woman in black, that entity that had relentlessly harassed me, was gone. Herr, I thank you for taking the time to read me. Although this experience has been one of the most disturbing, I have many other stories I would like to share with you. A big hug from Uruguay.
The woman in white.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriela, a faithful listener from Ecuador. If you consider that this story has the right mystery and darkness for a video, I beg you to modify the names of the protagonists to protect their identities. If so, I leave it up to you to decide the title of this story. Almost 18 years ago, my mother, Sarah, worked in 2 buildings on 6 de Diciembre Street. She was in charge of cleaning in 2 apartments located on the 4th and 7th floors, the latter being the highest floor of the building. Both apartments were inhabited by 3 brothers. However, on most occasions, only 2 of them were present. On the 4th floor, Miss Lucia, and on the 7th floor, young Carlos and Miss Marta. The occupants of the 7th floor were usually absent during my mother's chores, as they were university students. One day, while my mother was cleaning the 7th floor apartment around 9 a.m., she saw a young woman dressed as a bride. Intrigued and thinking it might be Marta, she followed her into the young woman's room, asking if she was getting married. However, upon reaching the room, my mother felt a deep dizziness, as if she was going to faint. She saw the mysterious young woman approach a large window that covered an entire wall of the room. Before my mother's astonished gaze, the young woman jumped out. After recovering from the shock, my mother approached the window, but it was closed. How was that possible? Minutes later, the real Marta returned to the apartment. Noticing my mother visibly upset, she asked her what had happened. My mother told her what she had seen, but when she looked out onto the street, there was no trace of the tragedy. A few days later, while talking to Carlos, he asked her if the ghosts in the building had frightened her. Carlos revealed that years earlier, a young woman lived in the same apartment, and on her wedding day, she discovered her fiancé with another woman. Heartbroken, she returned to the apartment and threw herself out of the window. What my mother witnessed was a macabre repetition of that event. On another occasion, Dark Lord, I will tell you about the tragic fate of this young woman's father. For now, I can only tell you that those who have recounted these events have been direct witnesses to intense paranormal phenomena. It has been a pleasure to share this story with you. Until next time. Best regards, Gabriela.
The Pajama.
Hi, I'm a fan of yours. I listen to you while I'm drawing or doing homework, and I got the courage to tell you about something that happened to me. One day, like any other, I decided it was time to clean my room. My mother, always willing to lend a hand, and I embarked on this mission to get rid of the old to make room for the new. Any excuse was a good one to spend time together, and amidst laughter and memories, the day flew by. The sun illuminated the room in a special way, highlighting every corner and shadow. Among the mountain of clothes, forgotten objects, and souvenirs, something I never expected to find emerged. A black jumpsuit with smiley faces printed in bright colors and little white dots decorating it. It looked like baby pajamas, but in adult size. "Mom, do you remember these?" I asked, holding the onesie in my hands, shaking off the dust that covered it. She walked over, squinted, and looked at the garment. "Not really, but it looks to be in perfect condition. We could sell it," she suggested, though we both knew that would never happen. If there was one thing that characterized my mother, it was her ability to accumulate things. To avoid more clutter, and without telling my mom, I decided to get rid of the jumpsuit. I put it in a garbage bag that was full of unusable clothes. Once our work was done, I took the dirty clothes to the neighborhood laundromat, while the jumpsuit awaited its fate in the trash. The morning after the episode with the laundry, as I folded and hung up the clothes, there was the jumpsuit, shiny and fresh as if it had just been washed. I didn't understand how it had gotten out of the bag where I threw it. I thought maybe my mother had taken it out, and when I confronted her, she told me that she had found it on the couch, and noticing that it was dirty, put it in with the rest of the laundry. She even described to me in detail how she found it. I am sending you a photo recreating his description. That strange coincidence made me nervous, causing me to question whether the jumpsuit had moved on its own. I tried to remember if I had accidentally left it on the couch. After all, there are times when I leave things in places and then forget. Trying not to make a big deal of it, I simply folded it up and put it in my drawer. However, the restlessness returned the next day. As I was looking for clothes to get dressed, I saw something peeking out from under my bed. Upon checking, I found it was the jumpsuit. Puzzled, I wondered how it had ended up there. Without giving it much thought, I pulled it out, shook it to dust it off, and folded it again, and put it away. The days that followed were even more puzzling. I kept finding the jumpsuit in unusual places, in different positions. At first, it only appeared in my room. But then one day, to my horror, I found it sitting on a chair in the dining room. Frustrated, I decided to get rid of it again, putting it in the kitchen trash can. I waited patiently for the garbage truck to arrive, personally handing the bag containing the jumpsuit to the collectors. I went to bed that night, believing the problem was solved. The next morning, however, my heart stopped when I saw the jumpsuit in the yard, dirty, with its sleeves tied to the door, as if trying to return. Fear came over me. I questioned whether this could all be an elaborate prank, or if, worse, the pajama had a life. Theories swirled in my head. Was I being haunted by a spirit? Was I losing my mind? Was there something hidden in that pajama that I didn't understand? Months went by, and the presence of the pajama became recurrent. I would see it all over the house, whether it was peeking out of a window, hanging from a hook, or hiding in some corner. I learned to live with this in my life. It happens very, very rarely anymore, but it still happens sometimes. I just hope that someday it will stop.